Welcome to this new episode of Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD. Today, I have the great pleasure of having with me Dr. Stephani Mason. Dr. Mason is an associate professor of accounting at DePaul University, where she teaches advanced level undergraduate and graduate courses in accounting and valuation. Stephanie earned her PhD in accounting at Rutgers University, her MBA in finance and accounting at the University of Chicago, and her bachelor's in accounting at North Carolina A&T State University. With over a decade working in investment management at JP Morgan Investment Management, the JP Morgan Private Bank, and US Trust, she conducts academic research on accounting auditing standards, financial regulation, as well as diversity in the accounting and finance industries. Stephanie serves as a member of the PhD Project Advisory Council, the Black Alliance of Colleges and Employers, BASE, Board of Directors, the AICPA National Accreditation Commission, Business Valuation Task Force, and Financial Instruments Advisory Group, and the American Accounting Association Meetings Committee and Diversity Initiative. She is an editorial board member of 5 academic journals and founded the Wonder Women of Diversity, a group that hosts discussions about diversity, equity, and inclusion in both the academic and corporate settings. Stephanie, welcome to this podcast. And our episode is called Promoting Faculty Diversity, the PhD Project. I'm so happy to have you here today. I'm happy we can talk about this question of faculty diversity, which is one that
Absolutely.
I've touched upon mostly from the side of the graduate students, today from the side of faculty. But guess what? Faculty comes from somewhere, right? So
Absolutely.
super
Absolutely.
happy to
I'm
have you here today.
excited to be here.
So Stephanie, of course, I shared this very condensed bio of yours with all these accomplishments, all these things that you're involved in, all these projects that you're promoting. But I'd love to get to know who is Stephanie, me and the audience, I'm sure. Who is Stephani Mason? What brought you to do research in your domain, and eventually to do all these things you do, but to have this mission within yourself of promoting diversity in your domain, but specifically in academia and in faculty. Who is
Yeah.
Stephani Mason, the scholar?
So I think before we get to the scholar, there is really who I am as a person. So
Sure.
I grew up as the child of, I always say teachers and preachers in the southern part of the United States. I was really blessed to go to North Carolina A&T, where I first encountered people who had been members of the PhD project, from Dean Clijster Craig, who was one of the early supporters of the project, a number of faculty. So in seeing myself in them, that empowered the person and professional that I became, right? And so that's really where the journey starts. It's when you see yourself often in the people in front of the classroom, it gives you a different way to think about your life. And
Mhm.
so from there, I went and worked in public accounting. And then I found my way to the University of Chicago as a graduate student. And to contrast the two experiences, I went from being an undergrad at the nation's largest HBCU to one of 8 Black students at the University of Chicago, 8 out of maybe 750 or 800. Um, and
Wow.
so the difference in those two experiences, while stark, what was important there was encountering faculty who took an interest in me as a person. And so even though I left there deciding, because I contemplated getting a PhD then, and then I thought, oh no, I want to go take on the world and make a lot of money. It was always in the back of my mind that there were faculty members who took an interest in me, who I always would go back to in the decision making, that kind of started the journey. And so I'm gonna date myself a little bit because I was out working and I would receive these postcards from the PhD project about coming to the what was then the November conference to learn about being an academic. And at the time, in addition, I also had taken on a responsibility teaching a class at the City University of New York. And so I invited Bernie Milano, who ran the PhD project in the KPMG Foundation, to come to my class, to talk about, lots of different things. And as he left, he said to me, you really should consider going to get a PhD and making this,
Mm,
the thing that you do. And when I went home that day, I said, he's right. And so that was about 2005 or 6. And so then I signed up and went to the conference, which became a very pivotal moment in my life in terms of saying, okay, maybe now it's time to get off of this, pathway. And the handwriting was already on the wall that there was some, major issues on the horizon in the financial market. And so I went to the
mm,
conference and I met a woman named Sandra Shelton, who happened to be one of again, a very early supporter, member of the PhD project. And she was doing this panel about whether or not going back is an investment or a sacrifice. And it gave you all the things that one has to think about to move their journey forward. And I got
mhm.
back home saying, oh, I'm gonna do it. And then I didn't do it. Then I didn't do it. Um, I waited a year, but all of those things were important because they reminded me as I went through the process. Because the year that I didn't apply, I went back to professors from earlier parts of my journey to talk about this. And like I said, who I am as a child of teachers and preachers. And so when I
Mhm.
told my mother, who had been a lifelong educator, she said, "Girl, I don't know why you didn't do this like 10 years ago, because we knew that you were meant to do this when you were teaching those dolls and stuffed animals in your room, every day in childhood."
That's
And,
that's
and so that
amazing.
doesn't answer the second part of what you asked, which was, so how did I get to this part of the research that I do now? So my traditional academic research is, in accounting standards. But the reality of being a Black academic in this world, there were constant reminders, and this is not just for Black academics, this was my perspective. There is a lot of inequity in the academy. And there
Mhm.
were constant reminders from the time of being a PhD student through as I've progressed through the journey that said we need more than anecdotal evidence about the inequity in the profession. And so that led me to, doing some work around those things, and really trying to document, not just in the academy, but in accounting and other parts of business, um, that there was inequity, um, and that we needed evidence so that we could have evidence-based decision making. Because
Mhm.
too often, um, we talk about things, but we don't have real research to point to. And that's what I hope to provide into the marketplace for universities and organizations to be able to reflect on that some of this inequity actually is real.
That makes total sense. Now, you've mentioned the PhD. I mentioned it at the beginning. You've mentioned it a couple of times in retelling your story. Let's just pause for a second and tell people out there who are watching, who are listening, what is the PhD project? What's the mission? What's the why of the PhD project?
So the PhD project was founded 30 years ago this year by a group of folks led by Bernie Milano at KPMG, with an ultimate goal of diversifying corporate America by diversifying the role models that were in front of the classroom. I think I'm a living testament to that because I know that my journey to the classroom came because there were people in front of the classroom that took an interest in me. And so, over the course of the years, in the 30 years that the PhD project has existed, the focus has become on encouraging those that are African American, Native American, and Hispanic to pursue PhDs in the business disciplines and to step in front of the business school classroom. We have increased the number from where it was 30 years ago. And more importantly, we have created a family and support system that really, I would say, embraces people from the time that they decide they want to pursue this through the lifelong journey of them being in the academy. It's not just going to a conference to say, oh, I learned a few things, now I'm going to go do this. We have things along the way that support people in the application process. When they become students, there are support mechanisms, conferences that they belong to, mentoring initiatives. When people become junior faculty in their disciplines, there are mentoring initiatives. There's an extension of the PhD project so that when people are looking to get tenure, they are being mentored and coached along that journey. When people get tenure, there's another group that works on grooming people for leadership opportunities within the academy. So it's really a lifespan of the academics journey that the PhD project has helped cultivate.
Hmm. That's an amazing model. I'm kind of, I'm feeling that it should be wider than just in the US, but I guess that's where it was born. And
Yes,
but
agreed.
I also know because we talked before that you don't stay only within the US with your
No,
with your activities in promotion and promotion
yeah.
of diversity. But this is super interesting, and I wonder whether you have an idea of, you just said it's been 30 years of the program. You went to your first conference more or less 20 years ago,
Yeah.
and we always hear news that things are evolving in academia. It's funny, in the business world it's more opaque, but what would you say thing what would you say changed from the time you started on, you had your first conference and then had that year of reflection and then started on your path to the PhD? What changes, what's different today, and what are the needs of the community today, in terms of the help that the PhD project can bring?
So it's interesting because I joined the PhD program at Rutgers in 2008. So the formation of my journey as a doctoral student was being born at the same time as the euphoria of the election of the first Black president in the United States. And at that time, we were in the midst of really rounding the corner, and we were at the center of a movement. And I have to give credit to where this is, that Bernie and KPMG were really at the forefront of pushing why diversity mattered in corporate America. So we were seeing it in the accounting firms, the financial institutions, the large corporations. Um, there were programs that were being created. There are other programs that were coming along at the same time to really promote why diversity mattered. In the years since I became a doctoral student, what we have seen is that the pendulum has swung in the opposite direction.
Hmm.
And in some respects, while there is more access to getting information to people about being a doctoral student, about becoming an academic, I personally find that on campuses of very well educated people, the resistance is greater today than it was when I started. And so, as the mission of the project and groups that are similar on campuses and in other disciplines that may be on or off campus, while the focus has still become how do we get people into the profession? Now I see the journey is how do we keep people in doctoral programs? How do we make sure that they are graduating and that we're not losing them for things other than performance in the program because of the state of the world? How do we support them on their journeys on campuses in what can be very, very isolating experiences?
Of course.
Um, I think about like the mission of the Tenure Project, which was formed by uh, what I call two of my younger sisters in the profession, Wendy and Esther. Esther is at the University of Washington and Wendy at Wharton, to say, okay, we know that certain people are less likely to get tenure. Why is that? How do how do we support that? So how do we go from just having people come into the profession to how do we have a world where we make sure they are as successful on their journey as other people? And I
Mm.
think that has to be the focus now because the world changed a lot from 2008.
I see what you mean. Now, what you say just made me think, of course, of other things, and I feel that there's the way I'm seeing it at this moment is there's this twofold way of looking at it, which is make allowing people from diversity, being African American, like you said, Hispanics, um, Latinx, etc., to see role models that and be able to imagine themselves in these roles and say, oh, I can do a PhD, I can be an academic. So that's, I guess, it's one of the missions, one of the
Yep.
mandates is to change the people, how the people see themselves and project themselves into the future. And I believe you've been, the organization has been doing it for 30 years, so you probably are well versed in how to do that. The other one, and that's where I'm curious, is to make people go through the academic journey and then, like you said, thrive in it for years, for make a living out of it and be a part of that ecosystem for the long term. Of course,
Absolutely.
there are no the number of tenure track positions is not infinite, we all know that.
Yep.
But you also mentioned in the beginning that one of the mandates or the whys of the project was to have more representation of diversity in corporate America. Did
Yes.
okay? So
Yep.
I'd really like to hear, because it's kind of a three sides of the same of the same
Yep.
form of the same thing. But I'd love to see specifically the connection between getting this higher education degree, which takes a lot of work, takes a lot of time in your young life to get that degree. How do have you tackled getting people with a PhD to then go into the job market, into corporate America, and be seen as, and be seen as valid candidates? Because I come from the life sciences, and
Yep.
there's still a lot of people struggling to have this feeling of, oh, I'm leaving academia for whichever reason, and now I have to fend for myself, and I have to convince people that yes, I have a PhD, but I'm going to be great in their company. There's a
Yep.
disconnect there, and I wonder whether you have some reflections in your domain, how you navigate that, and how you help people, young academics, young scholars, to navigate that, because it's not evident.
Yeah. So I want to roll back because I think it's twofold, and I may not have been clear. So one of the ways that as an academic I can impact corporate America is through my direct touching of my students who go into corporate America. That's one way. So let me talk
Of course.
about that first. So, and I'm going to talk about this as accounting, but this applies really in almost every discipline because our students are leaving school. And I'm going to talk about this whether they're undergraduates or graduates. They are leaving school and either they are going into the workforce or they are going into another academic environment.
Hmm.
One of the things that I can do, and people like me, is I hope that what happens is that I cast a broader net of students that I interact with, directly shaping who they become as future professionals, introducing them to opportunities that maybe no other professor talked to them about, right? Because hopefully I am having conversations with a wider swath of students. That's one way.
Hmm.
When KPMG, when the managing partner in the Chicago office sends a note to DePaul saying they're looking for more interns or young people to recommend for this kind of role, I would hope that I cast a wide net in terms of the students that I would consider recommending. That's one way. I'm not saying all professors that exist don't do that, but I would hope that this is something particularly that PhD project members are doing. That's the first thing. Same thing with going to graduate school. I right now have three of my former graduate assistants that are right now in PhD programs in accounting and accounting information systems. And I would like to think that it was the encouragement that they received from me that encouraged them to pursue this path. There was something about their interaction with me that said, oh, this is something I should think about as well. So there is that. There is also the fact that we have to send students into the world equipped to deal with the realities of the world today. I can't tell you the number of students that I have encountered as a faculty member that have never had a Black professor until they get to me. And I teach senior level undergraduates and graduate students.
Hmm.
Meeting me ought to change how they think about the world,
Of course.
right? Meeting me, hopefully, in the conversations that I bring to my classroom, gets them to think about the world a little more broadly, perhaps, than they thought about it before. Their understanding of what is possible for all kinds of people hopefully is shaped by them encountering me. And just that interaction alone, I hope, makes a difference to their how they view when they get to the real world and to the next academic opportunity or workplace. So there's that. Then there is the reality that everyone who comes through a PhD program, everyone may not decide that the academy is for them, right?
Yeah. Naturally.
And
Yeah.
that's valid. So how do we prepare those who decide to go into a different direction, that there are places that their talent can be utilized for public good? So let me give you an example. In the medical profession, we conduct a lot of research and often we exclude all people from studies, right?
Yeah.
And then we have this evidence-based decision that excludes people. I'll give you an example. I was reading something. Um, Angelina Jolie, the actress, had said that her daughter, who is African and adopted, had had some surgery, and there wasn't a lot of science on how to look at the infection around her skin in relation to someone else's skin. That might not
Mm,
seem like a lot to you until you've been the one who is on the other side where there's a research which might explain how your body reacts differently with something than someone else's.
of
We
course.
need people who go into other worlds, but still as researchers with all these valuable skills that will bring a different lens of how the world works. So, right now, today, there are alums of the PhD project at regulators all around the world, that are at standard setters, that are at the Federal Reserve Bank. Um, when the Federal Reserve Bank is making policies that impact people in America, I want that policy to be informed by multiple groups. Same thing as
Of
at the
course.
World Bank, right? We need well rounded thinking for evidence based decision making in more places than the academy.
It this
Does
makes
that make sense?
it makes total sense, and I think it's clear you just need to turn on the radio or the TV, and we're dealing as a society, as a species, we're dealing with more and more complex problems.
Yes,
And so we need people who are research minded, who have
yes,
that education, and who can, they're not in the lab, they're not in academia, but they're in the world using those skills to
that's right.
solve those big
To solve
problems that,
what
like you
may
said.
be real existential problems given
Exactly.
everything that's going on in the world.
So, Stephanie, I'm gonna interrupt for a second because there's a comment here. Let me read it quickly. I'm gonna put it on, and the name is it's so the person's anonymous with hi, Dr. Mason, former student from DePaul, class of 2017. You definitely made a great impact and changed my trajectory of my studies and career. I could not have accomplished my success without your guidance. As a professional, I've come back to DePaul and foster and inspire minority students to pursue and achieve a career in accounting. So,
I'm sending, this is not a plant, but so I'm sending out a kiss to whoever said that.
Yeah, no, and the reason I also brought it up, well, it's touching, but it's clear from this message that going through a program like this, and you said that there are in the space there are other programs that are similar or that have similar mandates, but um, it feels to me that there's what you're trying to do, and to do it in a concentrated way, because of course culture changes naturally with time, but here it's like a concentrated effort of changing something more quickly, right, and more
Yep,
powerfully. And you kind of said it in a different way, but the person who just shared here told us, and told just shared that uh, it changed the trajectory they were on, probably because, like you also said, it widened the scope of what they believed they could do with their
absolutely.
with their life, professional
Representation
or academic.
matters.
Yeah.
Representation matters, right? So I hope that when I walk into my classroom, I don't necessarily think that everybody in there should be an accounting professor. I hope that some, though, do become accounting professors because whether they like my class or not, they might see a way that they can improve on the model for other people. But likewise, sometimes we encounter students in our class, they may have chosen to be accounting majors, but depending on their circumstances, they may not understand the path from the classroom to the profession, right?
Of
And
course.
or they may see visuals of the profession that don't include visuals that include them, right? We have to narrow that gap. So I'll give you an example. I,
Mm,
I am so I like to read these stories, and a lot of it you'll see on Instagram or LinkedIn. So and so is the first person to achieve a PhD in thermonuclear physics or some crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And you'll say in 2024, this is the first, you know, brown person that, or woman that got a PhD in this area. And you're like, how is that possible? But we are still in history making time.
So it's true. It is totally true. And
Hey,
now,
Bawo, how are you? So
yeah.
Bawo, who this was my student when I was at the City University, and now she's gone on to get an Ivy League MBA and is doing big things in the world. So I couldn't be prouder of her. But this is an example of what I mean, right? You meet people. We would have conversations. She would pick my brain about going to get an MBA. And I hope that I changed how she thought about it. Again, she went and got this Ivy League MBA and is now running the world.
Mhm. So, okay, so and this is great, and it's nice to see this outpouring of appreciation and love. It's really really cool, and I think it's a testament to what you brought. You brought these specific people, but I know, and I'm sure many more. Now, because what I was trying to get to before is there's some transformation you're looking for in the people. It's not physical transformation, but it's in the mind. It's
Yes.
being able to envision something that was out of their universe of possibles before. And one of the things that I think a lot of people don't know before maybe crossing paths with the PhD project is, what is a PhD? What is it? What does it mean to be a researcher? And
Yeah.
I'd love, I'd love you to, if possible, in your words, in your, like, in a certain way, how can you popularize it? People who are listening and who are maybe in that position of, okay, I've measured in this, and now I've heard about research and about the PhD, but I don't, what I see usually are people in lab coats with pipettes, and I'm not in that domain.
The people that I run far away from. Yeah.
Well, that was my universe. But yeah, can you popularize it? What is this thing of the PhD in your domain? And you already mentioned the federal, the federal bank. That's not the exact term, but the Fed. You've mentioned government, but yeah, can you kind of open the curtain on
Yep.
what is this thing, how it can, what it asks of you, but also then what it gives you in the end?
So I'll say this. I'll start by saying it's often much harder when you're a student to envision what a professor does in business because we don't see the lab coats, right? So we don't
Exactly.
always understand that there's this other kind of stuff that the professor is doing. So I always say ultimately we are educator scientists, right?
Hmm.
Whereas maybe in some of the STEM areas, you're scientist educators, right?
Yes.
So
Very,
the
very much so. Yeah.
visual of us is people see us in our khakis, or if you're really fancy, but not me, you're dressed up and you walk in and you provide a lens of the business world. But the reality is, academics with PhDs are also, just like their science colleagues, conducting research on topics of interest to them. Now, I say that because people often don't realize that you are conducting research, first of all, that you find interesting. You're staking your career on how do I change the world, right? So when I was choosing the research that I wanted to do, what I was interested in is the behaviors around how people uh, use their judgment and decision making around the implementation of accounting standards, right? Because there's room for how you interpret things, right? And
Hmm.
so there's research out there that says how people make decisions may be influenced by gender, national origin, the culture that they grew up in, how you think about value. may be different depending on how you were raised. And I was interested in those things because when I worked in banking, I would see, oh, okay, okay, let me give you an example. I fly a lot, like a lot of people. And I have a friend who gets nervous when he has a female pilot, whereas I get incredibly excited because there's evidence that would say women are different kinds of decision makers, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
I were doing some research around that, there ought to be literally something we could test about how gender impacts decision making with
Sure.
pilots. There probably is some research. So these are the kinds of what might be funny questions we try and answer. So right now, for example, I'm working on a project because as I progressed through my career, I became much more interested in how diverse perspectives influence corporate decision making. And now I'm doing some work backing all the way up to how do these perspectives shape choices that people make for the kinds of degrees that they pursue, the kinds of schools that they decide to go to, and the careers that they pursue, right? Um, and so I'm working on this project, and we're literally just trying to figure out if someone has a certain background, are they more or less likely to make decision A versus decision B? That's the kind of stuff that we can add to the world. The question is, why does it matter?
Yeah.
So in accounting, we have a pipeline problem, just like STEM had a pipeline problem. Someone needed to figure out, is this a real pipeline problem or is this just some anecdotal stuff written about in the Wall Street Journal? If it's a real problem with decision making where certain people aren't exposed to the information they need to make the decision, they are afraid because they have perceptions about their profession that may not be real.
Mm-hmm.
Evidence allows the folks who run the profession to have an intervention and change how they view the people on the other side. So now the firms, in the research that we do, the firms can say, oh, there is a real problem with the pipeline. These people are not coming into the profession because they're not aware that it exists. It's not just me conjecturing that they
Mm-hmm.
aren't aware that it exists. There's now large sample survey evidence that I can present that says the average person starts thinking about their college major in their sophomore year. If you are not aware of a profession, it's hard to include that in your decision calculus.
Of course.
Now, the intervention that we can pitch to the accounting firms is it's not enough for you to talk to freshmen and sophomores in college. You got to shift to a much earlier point to start talking to people when they're in high school so that they can include you in their decision making process. Right? So those are the kinds of things that academics can do without the organizational pressure uh, to conform to a point of view that the firm has.
Yeah.
And that,
No,
that objective research is why it matters.
it makes total sense. Now that we've kind of taken care of this, you've given these examples that are great. I I love the example about the female pilot and how how different people can react to that. And it is curiosity about something complex is, I think, the base for anyone to decide to embark on such a long and difficult venture that is going into a PhD. Now, let's go back to the PhD project. You went through it. You are now part of the advisory council. But what people who are listening and who are maybe they have this question that they've been thinking about for a while. Now, maybe after listening to you, they're thinking, oh, I can be in this domain and do a PhD. What does the project offer? What is the conference? What is exactly the offer? What do people experience when they go to the conference, when they start being part of this community. Can
Yeah.
you, you know, quickly, of course, we could, I think we could talk about this for a long time, but just give people
Yeah.
an inkling of what they might expect and what they might gain specifically from, for example, going to the conference for the first time.
So the conference, I think, does a really good job of explaining to people what a PhD is for, right? Many people may not really understand. So they learn what it's for, how long does it take, how do I apply, what are the opportunities if I get a PhD, what are the types of schools. So it does that. And it gives you a really a roadmap to how should I go through the process of applying. That's the first step. Everyone that goes to the conference will not decide to pursue a PhD, and that too is fine because they are walking away from the project more informed than when they came to the project.
Yeah.
For those then that decide to pursue, now they have been introduced, and I don't use this lightly, to a family of people who look like them, who have survived and come out on the other end, that they now have for the rest of their life as informal consultants to their process. There is not a day that goes by that I am not in direct conversation with people in the PhD project. Why? Some of them not only were my mentors, they became my friends.
Hmm.
Academics have to publish papers in order to get tenure. Some of my closest co authors are people that I met through the PhD project. People like Jennifer Joe at Virginia Tech, Helen Brown at Rutgers, Derek Barr Pulliam at Louisville, Carrie Ann Sanderson at Bentley, Harita Akama at Nebraska. These are people, Emily Shaffron at Texas A&M, people who I'm actively working with, talking to Leah Muriel at North Florida. These are people that I'm working with who are helping me create the work that I need to stay on the journey, right?
Hmm.
They have
Hmm.
a vested interest in me because we have walked this path together, some ahead, some behind. So that's the part. But the family part of the PhD project, no one exists in a profession purely as a professional. We also are people too. Life happens. There are a group of people, if you are someone who's about to have a baby, how do you navigate that?
Yeah.
You might not feel comfortable talking about this to people in your department, but there's probably someone in the project that you can talk to. If you're contemplating moving schools, if you're perceiving that there's some inequity and this might be impacting your journey at your institution, there are legions of people that you can talk to, some of whom may be very senior to you, to help you navigate that. When
Hmm.
I was going up for tenure, there were no fewer than 10 very senior PhD project alums who had been deans, chairs, and provosts that were reading my tenure package to give me advice on how do I present my package to my school. You cannot underestimate how
Oh, that's
valuable that.
priceless. Yeah. Oh,
So
sure. I'm sure.
Jennifer Joe presented this paper on Monday, and it talked about there's this framework that says the life of an academic, networks matter, right? That matters in every profession. The PhD project is an additional network that people have that will support them on the journey. And it's not just in your discipline, because remember, when you go and take a job at a university and you're in a business school, you're going to interact with other people too. So I have a
Of course.
network of people in the other disciplines um, that can support me as well.
Mm-mm. That's amazing. I would have loved to have such a family going through my through my PhD adventure.
Because
Although
David, let me tell you, it wasn't all laughing and smiling. It was crying with the family too.
I'm
But
sure.
it was crying with people that that got it and help you move past that.
Yeah, it's funny because I often say, and it's not an original saying, but I think in the PhD, journey, it's important that having a village is key, because my experience in the STEM domain is a lot of people go through it very solitary, and like
Absolutely.
some people like me coming from across the ocean. I'm from Portugal originally. I'm a first generation. My mom is from Cape Verde. Many things that make it a particular voyage. And solitude can lead to, well, to mental health issues for sure, but to
No
people
doubt. No doubt.
leaving the yeah from people leaving the journey because they just don't have this village around them. And it feels to me like it all comes in one package with the
Yeah.
PhD project for
Yeah.
your domain. It's I can
David, let me
I
say this. I
Yeah,
don't
go
want to
ahead.
interrupt, but that village part is important. Being a PhD student and an early academic can be very isolating. Not only are there mental health implications, there are also physical health implications that come. I have people on my journey, like one who just texted me because I had some stuff going on with like strep throat and ear infection that was recurring, who keeps sending me a note every day to make sure I take the medicine, right?
Yeah,
I, you cannot underestimate what that means to your journey,
of
to
course.
have someone who takes an interest in you.
It's true. It is so true, so true. Now I'm looking at the time, and wow, it flew so quick. Um, and we've talked about the journey. I think you've done a great job at explaining what the PhD project is. But one thing that I'd love you to do is to trace a kind of a portrait of who is this aimed at, who is the candidate, for who should be listening and thinking, okay, uh, I should go to the website, which actually is going down here on in this marquee
Yep.
in the at the bottom of the screen, phdproject.org, super easy. But who from our listeners is a candidate for the PhD project? And I'll stop at that, and I have another question. But
Yep.
can you trace a
Yep.
portrait of that person that you're aiming to help?
So the candidate, first and foremost, are those that are considered underrepresented according to the U.S. Department of Education. So African American, Latinx, and Native American. Now, Native American is special because I think it can also be an Indigenous Canadian because of some special rule that
Okay.
exists for that. Interested in pursuing a PhD in one of the business disciplines, which would include accounting, finance, econ in a business school. It may include someone, Christine, if you're out there, clarify econ may be also in arts and sciences. I never can remember about econ. Information
Mhm.
systems, management, and marketing. So
That's
those are the
still a lot.
disciplines. Management, yeah, management is the biggest. Finance and information systems may be the smallest. And so those are the criteria. The conference is every year now in March. You come to Chicago. It used to be in November when it was getting cold. Now it's
Mhm.
March when it's still cold. And you spend 2 days there listening to many presentations about what it is, what the requirements are. And I think anyone who has a curiosity about being a professor, if they meet the demographic, should come.
Of course. And is it free? What's how does that work?
I think there's a small fee that students pay that that if they go into a program gets reimbursed to them
Okay. Okay. Perfect. And so they travel to meet in person. That I think that
in person.
that's very powerful, because I always tell people, network online as much as you can. It's important, but there's something different about being in person. So the fact that it's an in-person event is
Yeah, and just
I
really
think.
quickly, we have a
Yeah, yeah, sure,
series
sure,
of
sure.
webinars that Christina helps facilitate. So there's one on blazing the trailhead. If you're interested, Every month we do one for accounting, finance, and information systems, where you learn about a different person's journey. Strategic strategy and management has one, marketing has one. So there are online webinars that you can do every month to learn about people's journeys that you
Mhm.
don't have to have come to the conference to participate in.
Okay. So Christina is saying yes, it's finance and economics, management, marketing, accounting, information systems, and sciences. And then econ can be in arts and sciences if the university has an AAS and AACSB accredited business PhD program.
Okay.
And then about the conference, for those selected to attend the annual conference, we air travel is covered, hotel, and no registration fee. This is
Okay.
great because this way there's no friction at all,
Yeah.
and people. Now we're really getting to the end of our conversation, and I think we can end with again someone who's again the outpouring of appreciation for you doesn't doesn't stop, and the program doesn't stop. Nico Arguello or Arguello, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I'm sorry if I butchered it. It is literally because of my PhD project family, especially the Accounting Doctoral Association, that I am able to weather the storms. Also, one person's accomplishment is celebrated by everyone, which is inspiring and encouraging. Thank you, Steph, for all you do, and others for all you do to pave the way for the next generation of academics.
And
Um,
Nico rather just defended his dissertation proposal, so we are actively celebrating him.
Congratulations,
Yeah.
Nico. That's amazing. That's amazing. Um, with this message from Nico, I wonder whether you have. Well, first I'm going to ask if people want to reach out. I'm going to put again here at the bottom. So the Twitter handle is at the PhD Project. Super easy. The website
Yep.
also super easy. PhDproject.org. If someone listened to this conversation or watched and wants to reach out to you to comment
Yep.
or ask a
I
question.
can put my email in the chat.
Oh,
Um,
is LinkedIn? Are
if
you
you
are you
want,
active
or
on
you can.
LinkedIn?
Yeah, I'm active on LinkedIn. You can put my LinkedIn. Also connect with the PhD project on LinkedIn, because that's where you find the announcements about all of the webinars that are going. You can find out about some of the research that people are doing. The PhD project just posted about a paper that my co-authors did that I'm not on faculty diversity in the academy. And so it's a good start to understand who's out there, what we're doing, what are the disciplines. You don't have to go into a discipline maybe that you were trained in as undergrad. You might be more interested in management. Even if you are accounting, there's models for that. But actively read what's going on. Nico and the group and the ADSA have Instagram pages to highlight what members are doing. So
Okay,
connect in every way with us on social media.
sure. So, Steph, what I'm going to ask of you and of the other people who are also here with us is to share those links with me, be it Instagram,
Okay.
LinkedIn, etc. I've put your LinkedIn here, but if once I have all those links, what I'll do is I'll put them in the show notes of the episode, so anyone who watches or listens, can go through the notes and go follow you and explore more there. Um,
And I want to
yeah,
say one thing. The part
go ahead.
about making the leap to get a PhD is often removing the fear of the unknown. And that is why you talk to people who've done it, to realize, because if I can do it, anybody can do it.
Steph, this is a great way to finish. I was actually going to ask you for one like short word of inspiration, and you just gave it. So don't
Yeah.
be afraid. And of course, one of the clearly the PhD project is a great way to decide, to help you decide, because often fear keeps us from deciding. And here you'll
Yes.
know, like you said, if it does interest you, or also the outcome can be, okay, this is not something that I'm interested in, and then but then you'll really fully know, and that's
Yes.
precious. I really when I learned about this project, I was very curious. I didn't know of any other similar thing, and I think you do a great job advocating for it. I think it's really easy to understand what the mandate is. You make it really easy to for people to engage and go on this journey of losing their fear of this like white coat, etc., white lab coat vision, vision we have of researchers, and often white lab coat, but also white skin and gray hair, etc., etc. And I hope all of that is broken up through time, so that everyone is represented. But especially what I really love about this is we touched upon mental health a little bit at the end, and I think one great thing is people thrive when they can project themselves into inspiring positions. And mine might not be the same as my neighbors, but if there are young people out there that are coming out of university and that think that, oh, I'm not fit for research, although they have this burning question, if they have listened to this episode and if they explore the PhD project and embark on it, I think it's a win for all of us. And I commend you and the team for all these 30 years of doing this. Clearly there's some visionary people in there, because 30 years ago is a long time ago, and to have started this so long ago, anyway, it's I wonder whether you're celebrating this 30th year in a special way, or if you already did.
Yes,
But
in fact, we are having two more 30th anniversary celebrations. One at my university at DePaul on August 7th in Chicago, and then one in November at my alma mater at Rutgers in New
amazing.
Jersey. And each of those events will celebrate a different part. At DePaul, we're celebrating education is enriching for all, and we're going to include people across the disciplines talking about their research and the work that they're doing outside of research. Because again,
It's amazing.
research is for everyone.
It is, and everyone needs to be represented. And again, these problems that we're facing are more and more complex. So diversity will only help us deal with them the best way possible, and the and the most rational way possible too. Stephanie, this has been amazing. I have some comments here. Vivian is saying excellent program today. Love the conversation. I really enjoyed it too, Stephanie. It was really good. Also, Taura Perino saying very inspiring. Thank you, Stephanie, for all you do. And yeah, thanks Vivian for your comment. There's other comments here for me, but I'm not the guest. But thank you, Vivian. And oh, there's someone here. Christina Pathos
We have
is
the event link
sharing
if
a
people want
link.
to
You know
come.
what? I know we're finishing, but I'll change what's rolling here. I'll change this for that. Can you explain a little bit what it is while I'm copying
Yes. So
the
the
link?
at the event we're having these. Oh, sorry, Tara, I screwed it up. It's diversity enriches education for all. Thank you for that. See, this is what family does. Family, make sure you get
That's
it
it.
together. Okay,
Exactly.
Tara has been getting me together for 20 years. I need it. And I love her for it. Um, and so at these events, when we're celebrating again, we're presenting our work, how we're impacting the academy. At DePaul, we're going to have Kelly Pope, who has been my friend since undergrad. She was behind me in undergrad, but is ahead of me in the profession and sits across the hall. Jim Morey, who's a PhD in marketing. Derek Barpullian from Louisville. Ashley Rosette from Duke, who is, when I say a powerhouse, talking about why this stuff matters. Anthony Hood, who is a chief diversity officer with a PhD, uh, and a whole host of other people who will be there right before the Academy of Management annual conference.
Excellent. And just a question: can people who are in these cities, can that be their first touch point with the project, or is it just for people who are in the
No,
family?
I
Let's say.
think that if they want to come, we'll find a way to accommodate them, because that might be the thing that gets them to decide to go.
Awesome. Steph, this was a great conversation. We went a little bit above my usual time, but it was said, it was said so be passionate from you what you were sharing, but also so interesting for me to learn all of that, that I had some more questions to ask, and I just went ahead and did. I think people watching also enjoyed it. Myrna Varner is also saying great conversation. Thank you, Dr. Mason. For me personally, it was a great pleasure. This is super inspiring. I'm going to try and learn more about the PhD project,
And
because
hopefully you'll come visit with us.
oh, that would be great. Well, we'll keep in touch
Really
and see.
quickly, some of us will be in Montreal in the fall for a conference, so maybe we can
Oh,
introduce you to a bunch of PhD project people who will be there
that
for an American Accounting Association meeting.
well, it's a date. Let's talk about it off the air.
Yep,
But if you're here, then I cannot say no. That'd
yep,
be great. Awesome. And someone's confirming that you're extremely passionate, and it does
yes.
show, and it made for a great conversation. And apart from everything, just before we say bye to everyone watching, this is a subject that's close to my heart. Papa PhD, which is now called Beyond the Thesis with Papa PhD, is all about getting people to have a good, fulfilling and growth journey in graduate school, and not one of feelings of failure and of loss of identity, etc. And that's why I want to know more about the project, because I feel that you're hitting so many marks in terms of preventing any of that from happening, that yeah, it's been very inspiring to learn
That's
it
why
from
over
you directly.
90% of people who come through the project get their degrees, with 97% having jobs. It's the support of the
There you go.
family.
Of the family. There you go. So here's the family, and thank you for having been here. It's been a great pleasure, Steph.
Thank you so much. Have a good day, everyone. Happy Friday.